know this is late. I had a very, very busy day today, and I'm only just now able to sit down and record my vlog for today. Hey guys, KiraKennedy here with day 22 of my vlog Every Day in August challenge. And as promised, here finally is my NXT Takeover Brooklyn 2 review. I'm going to, just before I actually get into that fully though, I'm going to also point out that I'm gonna have to do my weekly recap tomorrow since I just don't have time to do both this and the review. Both this review and the recap. So look out for that tomorrow. I also apologize if I'm talking very quietly, but it is currently 1:45 Eastern when I'm recording this. So everyone in the house is kind of asleep and I don't want to wake them up. Anyways, let's get into the main reason we're here, which is NXT Takeover Brooklyn 2. This was basically the backstory for this is every few months the WWE's training brand NXT, which is just basically where they test out people before they throw them up on the main roster. They have a huge special, almost like a pay-per-view, which, well, yeah, it's basically the best way I can describe it. It's NXT's version of a pay-per-view. And this one in particular took place in Brooklyn, New York, the night before SummerSlam 2016. There were 6 matches on the card, all of them very, very good matches. Even the weakest match was still amazing to sit through. And in terms of predictions, I really only got one wrong, and it was for something that I stupidly overlooked. But I'll get to that in a minute. So the show kicked off with a very, very fun match. Austin Aries taking on No Way Jose. This was a fun match. Aries and Jose work fairly well together, and I'll admit the whole conga line entrance for No Way Jose, whose gimmick is basically he's a dancer, not that kind of dancer. Just he likes to dance. And in the end, my gut was right. Aries got the win off of his finishing submission, the last chancery, which is just basically he puts his opponent into a headlock while he bridges. From there, we move on to the first of 2 major debuts for NXT. For the night. You had the debuting Ember the former Athena Reese, taking on Australian women's wrestler Billie Kay, a former graduate of Canadian wrestler Lance Storm Wrestling Academy. And this was one hell of a way to debut Ember Moon. I've heard a lot of very good things about her since before she signed, but I've never really had the time to go and check out one of her matches. This was very, very fun. She is an amazing wrestler, and I think she's going to be getting a pretty decent opportunity here in NXT before she goes up to the main roster. But basically, Ember and Billie, both very great wrestlers, I should say, and Ember would get the win with her finisher, which in the Indies was called the O-Face, which is basically just a stone cold stunner off the top rope. I'll show you. I'll put a link to it in the description below to show you what it looks like. But after that, we moved on to the second of the big debuts for this show. Bobby Roode taking on Andrade Cien Almas. This, of course, being Almas' second major NXT TakeOver event since his debut at NXT TakeOver The End back in June. And this one probably the weaker of the matches on the card, but still very, very fun from start to finish. Roode, of course, getting the cool entrance of basically descending from this elevator while the crowd sang along with sang along to his theme music, which, while the song is very, very catchy, I think the crowd helped out too, because the Brooklyn crowd, much like the Full Sail crowd, which is where NXT usually tapes its events, the Brooklyn crowd, while they can be very obnoxious, can also be very, very entertaining, can also really, really add to a match. This was no exception, and Roode got the win after hitting his finisher, the Glorious Bomb, which it's basically a move called a pump handle slam. Again, I'll put a link to it in the description below. So after the 2 debuts, we moved on to the first of 3 title defenses on the main card. On the card. The first, of course, being a match for the NXT Tag Team Championships, with the Revival, the NXT Tag Team Champions, the Revival being, of course, Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder, taking on the team of Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. And this was the one match I called wrong. And the only reason I called it wrong was because I completely overlooked a major detail. Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa were both entered in the Cruiserweight Classic. And Gargano still hasn't had his second round match. His first round match was against Ciampa. He eliminated Ciampa. And then Gargano's second round match is supposed to air this Wednesday. It was taped like weeks ago. But I guess the WWE figured that if they had let Gargano and Ciampa win the NXT Tag Team titles, it would basically spoil that Gargano was not going to win the Cruiserweight Classic. Although, while he is one of my favorite wrestlers in the tournament, I still think it's going to be Kota Ibushi. But back to the event itself. The Revival have actually really impressed me since I watched them wrestle at NXT Takeover the End. And they definitely work very well with Gargano and Ciampa. They had a lot of great chemistry. There were a lot of great spots in this match. And my God, the back and forth. Like, this was a very evenly paced match, with each side getting in a good amount of offense. But in the end, Ciampa and Gargano would fall short after, I think it was Dash Wilder locked in a reverse figure 4, which is just basically a leg lock where you tie the guy's legs up to look like the number 4. And then after that very entertaining match, we move on to another very entertaining match, and something NXT puts on very well consistently puts on very well. This was a singles match for the NXT Women's Championship. Now, the NXT Women's division is probably is definitely head and shoulder in terms of wrestling quality, head and shoulders above the women's division on the main roster. Now this match saw champion Asuka taking on Bayley in a rematch from NXT TakeOver Dallas, where Asuka had made Bayley pass out from her finisher, the Asuka Lock, in order to gain the title. Now, I can't compare this to their match at NXT TakeOver Dallas because I didn't watch that. I didn't get access to the WWE Network until the day after, just in time for WrestleMania 32. But this was a very, very fun match. Asuka did dominate for most of it, which has pretty much been the case since Asuka debuted at NXT TakeOver Respect. But basically, this match was meant to be a send-off for Bayley after she lost, after Asuka basically kicked her friggin' head off. She got a standing ovation from the crowd, and since this is now about 2-3 hours after Monday Night Raw has gone off the air, Bayley got her send-off from NXT and then debuted on Monday Night Raw as the new challenger for, spoilers, the new women's champion Charlotte. And finally, we come to the main event, and the only championship on this card to change hands you had NXT champion Samoa Joe taking on the King of Strong Style, Shinsuke Nakamura. Now, I will admit, something about this match felt off. I can't really put it into words now. I'd probably have to watch the match again to figure out what it was. But this was still a very, very entertaining match from start to finish. Even, I'd say, the point where it really got interesting was when Nakamura made his entrance and had an actual violinist playing along to his theme song, which is already an epic theme song, but having the live music added in really, really added to that. But basically, this one was surprisingly evenly matched for a Nakamura match, because usually Nakamura gets in the majority of the offense in his matches. But in the end, Nakamura would pick up the win and take the NXT Championship from Samoa Joe after nailing his finisher, which is basically a knee to the head called the Kinshasa. A knee to the head that I should have had also legitimately dislocated Samoa Joe's jaw. They actually confirmed that on WWE.com. To take his first NXT championship, his first championship in general here in WWE since debuting in back in the end of April at NXT Takeover Dallas. So that was basically NXT Takeover Brooklyn 2. And if I had to give it a rating on our Macho Man scale of coolness, this would probably be in a similar vein to what I would have given NXT Takeover The End back in June, and that's a very solid Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig. You know, even the absolute worst match on the card, which really wasn't all that bad, was still entertaining to watch, and it was still just an absolute wrestling clinic, just amazing wrestling all the way through. So, with all that out of the way, if you guys would like to follow me on social media, I am on Twitter at KiraKennedyHNR, Tumblr at KiraKennedyHNR.tumblr.com, and of course you can always check out my Facebook page at facebook.com/KiraKennedyReviews. And as always, if you'd like to check out any of my past work, my Let's Plays, my stream archives, even my reviews, you can do so at peanutbutterdisaster.com. So until tomorrow, I'm Kira Kennedy, and thank you for watching.
Peanut butter disaster.